What's up, guys? My name is Wade Fullingham. I want to talk to you today about wrist angles and which one should you use. Should you have a flat wrist? Should you have an extension in your wrist, or should you have flexion in your wrist? There's not a right or wrong way. We do tend to see more problems with extension, but there are a lot of good players that do that. I want to help you find out which one's best for you. So we're going to talk about that today. It's time to stop guessing and let's create a game built on consistency. All right, when it comes to wrist angles, there's many different positions in this swing we can talk about when it comes to wrist angles, but this video is going to cover the flat wrist versus flexion. We may even talk a little bit about extension here. What should you do with your lead wrist at the top of the swing? So this controls the position of the club face. Now, there's many variables that can affect impact. Okay, but this is a big one. You see guys like Dustin Johnson or John Rahm that got this big flexed wrist at the top, and then you got guys like Roy McIlroy, Tiger Woods that all have a flat wrist, and then you got some guys, older guys like Fred Couples. I can't think of some other tour players that go into extension. But most good players will do one thing on the downswing. Most good players, regardless of what position they are at the top, will flex it back on the downswing. So what does that do? So if you take the golf club in your hand and you take your left hand and you flex it, pull it into your forearm right there, you're gonna see that face spin down, right? You're seeing that spin down, versus when you go into extension, it opens the club face. So in general, if you'll understand that there's motorcycle action, backwards motorcycle action, depending on which way you go, I guess, controls the club face on how it moves and how it can square up. A lot of people think squaring the club face up is the rolling of the forearms. It works. It's something that you can do, but won't necessarily produce consistency with the club face, because if you're struggling with directional control, most likely it's a club face problem, because the club face it controls where the ball starts. So let's talk about now what you might want to do at the top of your swing. Okay, so for our younger players that are really dominant with their lower body and they like to get really open through impact, meaning their bodies look a lot like this, their hips are way open, the chest are way open, those guys we tend to start to see more flexion. Now, some people will have what we call downswing flexion. Okay, so that means on the downswing they flex it. Now, most good players do this. They flex this on the downswing because they roll that face shut. Okay, watch yourself on camera. See if you're flexing on the downswing. I will post some links to some videos on YouTube with different tour players that do this, so you can go and watch them. But if you look at your swing and you're downswing flexing, then I don't think you need to add more flexion at the top. So if you can do this on the downswing and you're already doing it, right, I don't think you need to add a bunch of flexion at the top. Now, if you're hitting the ball right, okay, so if you're hitting the ball to the right and you're one of those guys that turns their body a lot, gets their hips really open, the chest really open, and you struggle with getting the club face to square up, I would try getting your wrist in a more flexed position. Okay, so get to the top of your swing, go from a flat wrist, or if you're an extension, you're probably having all sorts of problems trying to get that club face square, but try to get that club face in a more closed position, because when you look at the club face, you can see it's already pointed down, right? So in that case, if you have lots of body rotation and you're struggling with the ball going to the right, I would add some more flexion at the top. Now, what's the benefit to that? The benefit to that is when you lock this wrist down at the top and then all you do is turn your body on the downswing, you don't have to release it from there because the face is already closed. So it's already closed, so what do you do from here? Well, if you look at DJ and John Rahm, they turn their body really hard to keep that club face as square as long as possible, because basically it's been locked in position. That's why you're starting to see a lot of good players do that, because the face is locked into position. It doesn't have to release anymore. It's staying square really long or closed, and how they don't make it close too much is by getting their body open. Because if you look, the more my body turns, the longer that face stays to the right. And then if I add the flexion, I square that up. Okay, so if you're the body style, the swing style where you have lots of rotation in your swing and you're hitting it right, consider trying some more flexion at the top of your swing. See if that brings that club face a little square. Now, if you don't have a lot of body rotation and you have a little bit more of an arm action, which is nothing wrong with that, but let's just say you get your arms moving more than most people, I'm not gonna suggest that you do flexion. Okay, because if you're more of an arm swing and you get into flexion, you're going to shut that face really hard and you're going to have a hard time getting it square. Okay, so that's what I would go for, more of a flat wrist. So not actually trying to get there. Now, if you're missing it right and you still have a flat wrist at the top, check your grip. We're not going to get too deep into that. I just want to talk about what you see on tour. You look at a guy like Fred Couples, who goes into extension at the top. So he gets a little bit across the line. Because he gets across the line, he has to be an extension. But then when he comes down, that wrist squares back up. There's no way that any player can stay in extension because the club's going to get too far open and it's going to come too vertical. So in Fred Couples, in his swing, he goes in extension at his top, but he corrects on the downswing. So really, depending on what you can or cannot do on the downswing is how you should change your wrist angles. If you can't do this on the downswing, if you can't go into a lot of downswing flexion, meaning you can't feel this and you're missing the ball right, I'm talking about for people that miss the ball right mainly here, then you might need to actually start trying to get that more flex at the top if you can't do it on the downswing. So you're already there. So when you go to the top of your swing, club's here, you're already there, and then you can just hold it. You don't have to try to crank it more. If you can crank it and go into flexion, then you can probably afford to have a flatter wrist. It just depends on the ball flight you're trying to produce. But mainly what I want you to get out of this video is knowing that you can change this wrist angle to change your face conditions on the downswing. If you learn anything, I'm not going to say I know everything there is to know about wrist angles and when or when you should not do it. What I do know is what this wrist does and how it affects the golf swing, and everybody's different. If you're struggling to miss the ball right, you got lots of body turn, I think you can go into more flexion. If you have more of an arm swing, I think you can afford to have a flatter wrist. Double check your grip. If you're missing right, you can get a little stronger. Now, let's just say you're that person that, let's say you have a flat wrist or you have a lot of flexion, you're missing it left. Well, those guys have to really make sure they rotate. Either A, you need to go to a flatter wrist if you keep hooking it too hard, or B, you need to make sure you open up, get the body coming through the shot. You've got to make sure you're opening to keep that club face as square as long as possible so that face doesn't turn down so hard. We can also get into talking about release. We're not going to talk about it in this video, but if you have lots of flexion and you're missing it left, if you're taking this wrist angle and you're flipping it this way, you're going to struggle hooking it. I'm not going to get to that in this video. I hope that cleared some things up about how you can use this wrist angle to affect the ball flight. And let me leave you the final note. Pay attention, if you're a downswing flexion guy, pay attention to when you start that. You're not going to see, when the club gets into the delivery position is right here, right when the club gets right here in the downswing. So wherever the club is right here, from here to impact, you're not going to change a lot. So if your face is way open like this on the downswing, it's going to be hard to get the club face square from here to there. Some people can, but it's really hard. So what I'm saying is, if you can get this wrist to start flexing from the top to this position and get the club face in a good position at the delivery position, then you're going to have a lot better time squaring it up. Okay, especially if you miss it right. Okay. And look at that club face. If that face is pointing straight up in the air on the downswing, you've got to get this and you've got to roll it. A good tactic is to take a piece of tape, put it on the shaft, right here, right on top, and on the downswing, you want to turn that piece of tape in front of you on the downswing. So as you're coming down, you're going to turn that face down, okay? Oops. You're going to turn that face down and you're going to square it up, and that'll help you hit a lot straighter shots, okay? So like I said, I hope that clears things up. If you're looking for a guide on how to break 100, 90, 80, I'm working on breaking 70. I don't have that one out yet, but if you're looking for a guide to learn how to break those barriers, there's a link below. It's a free guide, it's a free video that will walk you through all the benchmarks you need to hit to break that barrier. Because there's lots of players I've seen that have struggled. They'll shoot 81, 80, they might even shoot 79, but they can't consistently break 80. A lot of times they get stuck because they don't know what benchmarks they need to be looking for. How do you break that barrier? What are the things you need to be looking at in your game to break that barrier? I'm going to lay those out for you. If you're a 100 shooter, I'm going to show you that as well as a 90 shooter trying to get in the 80s. I will show you in these free videos. Just click the link below in the description of this video. and I will show you the things you need to be focusing on to get to that next scoring level. It'll give you clear direction to get there. Check out that free guide. We'll see you guys in the next video.